It is 5 a.m., and the Amazon has not yet stirred. A white blanket of mist floats above the trees, with thousands of treetops peeking through like the roofs of a submerged city. Below, the river water is black and so still that the entire sky is reflected in it. A raindrop on the tip of a leaf slowly grows heavy, trembles, and falls. Somewhere in the distance, the call of a howler monkey echoes, and the entire jungle wakes up at once. A blue morpho butterfly cuts through the mist and vanishes. This is the world's largest rainforest, yet in the next 10 minutes, you will discover that it is perhaps also the world's largest ruin. For roads, canals, and earthen pyramids lie buried beneath these trees. For 500 years, the world claimed nothing had ever existed here. But the world was wrong. The year was 1541. A Spanish expedition descended from the towering Andes, a group plagued by mud, rain, exhausted horses, and starving soldiers. Their leader was Francisco de Orellana. He had set out in search of a city of gold, and found this river instead. With their food supplies exhausted, Orellana and 50 of his men boarded a makeshift boat and drifted downstream, hoping simply to find sustenance. They never returned. The river pulled them along for 8 months, until they finally reached the Atlantic Ocean. There was another man on that boat, a priest named Gaspar de Carvajal. He carried a pen rather than a sword. What he wrote on the sodden paper, by the flickering light of a lantern, shook the foundations of history. He recorded that the riverside villages seemed endless, with houses following one another for miles. He described a town of gleaming white houses, wide and straight roads leading into the jungle, and pottery that he deemed superior to the finest wares of Spain. He also wrote of encountering tall, powerful women who fired arrows at them. It was because of that single page that the river came to be named the Amazon. Carvajal lost one eye forever during the journey, yet no one believed what his remaining eye had witnessed. When later explorers returned to the river, nothing remained, only empty banks, dense jungle, and scattered, small settlements. There were no cities, roads, or ruins. Not even a single fragment of stone was found. So, historians delivered their verdict. Carvajal was a liar, merely a priest who wanted to glamorize his failed expedition. His diary was dismissed as a work of fiction and consigned to the shelf, and science, too, ultimately ratified that same judgment. In the 20th century, scientists examined the Amazonian soil and shook their heads in disbelief. The soil was red, thin, and virtually lifeless. The region receives so much annual rainfall that nutrients are washed out of the soil and carried into the rivers. The ecosystem's vitality resides not in the soil itself, but in the trees. When a leaf falls, it decomposes rapidly, and the tree immediately reabsorbs the nutrients, a closed loop that leaves nothing behind for humans. By 1971, this concept had been dubbed a false paradise, lush on the surface but hollow within. The conclusion seemed clear. Large cities could never have flourished on this land. Yet, there was a hitch. Farmers living in the forest disagreed. In certain areas, along riverbanks, and deep within the jungle, the soil was different. Black, soft, and deep, sometimes remaining dark for up to 2 meters below the surface. Locals called it terra preta, black earth, and claimed that anything planted in it would thrive. When scientists excavated the site, they discovered charcoal fragments, burnt bones, fish remains, and most significantly, thousands of shards of broken pottery. This soil was not a product of nature but of human activity, created gradually over generations from waste and ash. Consider this. 1,000 years later, the soil remains fertile. This implied that a large population had lived here, in the same location, for an extended period. The black earth was the evidence, yet the cities themselves remained missing. Then, starting in the 1970s, trees began to be cleared along the western edge of the Amazon. As the forest was removed, something startling was revealed on the ground. Deep trenches dug into the earth, forming perfect squares, perfect circles, and in some places, massive hexagonal shapes, numbering in the hundreds and spanning several hundred meters in width. These formations, which date back thousands of years, came to be known as geoglyphs. Soil analysis revealed that the entire forest had not been cleared to create these structures. Instead of destroying the forest, the people had managed and preserved it. Scientists still debate whether these formations were forts, marketplaces, or religious sites. But a major question now confronted everyone. If clearing just a few trees revealed so much, What lay beneath the remaining 5 million square kilometers of forest? Since clearing the entire Amazon was impossible, humans learned to look through the forest rather than cut it down. A small aircraft flies just above the treetops, and a machine mounted beneath it fires millions of laser pulses downward every second. While most beams bounce back upon hitting the foliage, some slip through tiny gaps in the canopy to reach the ground below. A computer measures the timing of these pulses and performs a feat akin to magic. It erases the trees. On the screen, the green forest vanishes layer by layer, revealing the bare earth beneath. This technology is known as LiDAR. For the first time in 500 years, humans could see beneath the Amazon, and what was revealed effectively tore up the history books. In 2024, scientists released a map of the Upano Valley, situated at the foot of the Andes Mountains in Ecuador, revealing over 6,000 square earthen platforms. Homes were built upon these platforms, organized into clusters resembling neighborhoods. Interspersed among them were agricultural fields and drainage channels, all connected by perfectly straight roads up to 10 meters wide and 25 kilometers long. Constructing these roads, carved directly into the hillsides, required immense planning, leadership, and the labor of thousands of people. The most surprising aspect was their age. This place began to be settled around 2,500 years ago, meaning that at the very time Rome was emerging as an empire, people in the Amazon rainforest were building cities, and this was not the only such place. Using LiDAR, researchers discovered cities belonging to the Casarabe culture in the plains of Bolivia. At their center stood a massive earthen structure, 22 meters high, comparable to a 6-story building, surrounded by circular walls, moats, canals, ponds, and raised causeways designed to span areas prone to seasonal flooding. These were not congested urban centers like those of today, but rather sprawling settlements where homes, gardens, fields, and forests seamlessly intermingled. Carvajal was not lying. He recorded exactly what he saw. This raises the question, where did it all go? Scientists offer several explanations. An active volcano named Sangay looms right next to the Upano Valley. While its ash once enriched the soil, that same ash may have eventually forced the inhabitants to abandon the area. Evidence from other regions points to prolonged droughts, shifts in rainfall patterns and river courses, and the collapse of agricultural systems. However, the most devastating factor emerged after 1492. When European ships arrived in the Americas, they brought diseases such as smallpox, measles, and the flu. These pathogens did not need to wait for European soldiers to penetrate the jungle. Traveling via rivers and trade routes, they spread from person to person, reaching the interior long before the soldiers themselves arrived. People who had never seen a European face perished from the diseases they brought, one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. This was also the event that kept the truth hidden for 500 years. These people had built their cities not of stone, but of earth, wood, and leaves. When the people were gone, the forest scattered its seeds. First grass, then shrubs, and finally trees took root. Roots grew where homes once stood, leaves carpeted the roads, and trees rose atop the pyramids. The jungle did not erase the cities, it merely blanketed them, creating what we now call pristine nature. Yet the trees themselves are now bearing witness. When scientists inventoried the trees of the Amazon, they discovered a distinct pattern. Trees useful to humans, such as Brazil nut, acai, and peach palm, are not distributed evenly across the forest, but are most abundant in the very areas where ancient settlements once stood. In other words, a portion of the forest you walk through today is actually a garden planted by someone who died 1,000 years ago. Even now, the descendants of those planters inhabit this forest. They know which leaves serve as medicine, which months specific fruits ripen, beneath which trees to sit to summon fish. For a long time, we called this backwardness. Yet it was not backwardness, but a lingering memory. Let us return to that river now. Evening is falling, the water has turned golden, and a pink river dolphin surfaces, breathes, and vanishes into the darkness. On the bank, something glints in the soil amidst the roots of a tree. A hand picks it up and washes it in the water. It is a fragment of a vessel, bearing ridges made by fingers that remain clearly visible to this day. Someone had crafted this vessel, someone had served food in it, and then everything vanished, save for this fragment. We used to think of the Amazon as a place where humans never ventured, but the truth is quite the opposite. The Amazon is a place where humans arrived, settled, and flourished, only to be wiped out, leaving nature to grow the world's most beautiful forest over their graves. As the camera rises, the trees appear to shrink, and the green expanse stretches out endlessly. Somewhere deep within this greenery lies a road, straight and undisturbed, untrodden by human feet for centuries. Now, a final question to ponder. If an entire civilization can vanish so completely over 500 years that we deny its very existence, then how many things today do we confidently claim never existed? The forest offers no answer. It simply continues to breathe. If you've watched this far, it's likely you value the truth over mere entertainment. Subscribe to the Facts Planet channel now for more untold, mind-bending documentaries, because the next truth revealed might just change your perspective forever. See you in the next documentary. Until then, take care.